You want to keep people focused on that one job to be done. And if you do that, you can actually turn a 1 or 2 rep team into the production of 10, 20, 30, maybe even 40 reps in terms of the actual conversations in your market and keep everybody happy.
Very confused SDRs, and ultimately the results are nil. Unimpressive. Cost of acquisition from outbound becomes expensive. Instead of going to the market and buying a gajillion tools, keep it simple. Welcome back to another edition of Outbound Sales No Fluff, the podcast with your 2 favorite outbound operators. I'm Ronan Pessar, and with me is Ryan Reisert. And today we are doing a second part to an episode that we dropped 2 days ago, where we talked about the sales acceleration industrial complex. In that episode, we talked about the problem. In this episode, we're going to talk about the solution, how you can turn it on its head to turn 1 or 2 reps into a highly efficient outbound machine. Ryan, you ready to get into it?
Buckets, baby.
We are back.
That was a cool move.
Right? I got moves.
You're such a great content creator. So we ended last time with the idea that predictable revenue was maybe a dead model, but the reality is it was getting killed or has been killed for most organizations because of the sales acceleration industrial complex selling you a playbook that fundamentally breaks the concept because it just completely eliminates the idea behind what you're trying to accomplish. So, creating specialization is not a bad thing, but there's a better approach to specializing your top of funnel, creating a funnel above the funnel that actually does promise more results for your organization in a very efficient way, but it has to be done the right way. And so if we take a step back and we actually look at the standard process for go to market, the North Star for any organization should be that if my salespeople are not in scheduled interactions with their next best prospect, or maybe even customers doing upselling, right? They're in a scheduled interaction selling, they should have a system and a process that allows them to get into their next best conversation. It's not about meetings, it's about conversations with our market. So that's the most important thing. The other thing that's really important here is that if you can achieve this objective, then you can rethink how the top of the funnel is done, where you're not just trying to cram meetings down everyone's throat by spamming your TAM, but actually taking a very strategic approach to solving that top of funnel equation, target message channel timing. Okay. So again, North Star, if I'm a sales organization, I want my salespeople in scheduled interactions with people. People agree to meet with me. That's great. And then if they're not in a scheduled interaction, they should have a system and a process where they make a couple clicks in their next best conversation. That is actually achievable if you follow this methodology, right? And I wrote about this in Outbound Sales No Fluff in 2017. This is the methodology that I've been using since I started my career in 2008. And a lot of the principles are not too different from predictable revenues concept of having a repeatable, predictable model that can scale your business. It's just thought of a different way. So target message channel timing. If my goal now is to get my reps into conversations, not just meetings, right? Scheduled interactions and conversations, then now we have to look at first principles. What is the fastest path in a few clicks to the next best conversation? Well, if you're not knocking on doors, you're not in an event, right? You're getting people into a phone conversation. We send the emails, we do the LinkedIns, we do the whatever to try to get someone to show up to a virtual event now. Back then, that was a very difficult thing to do. 2008, 2009, you wanted to get somebody into a WebEx or a GoToMeeting. There was not the same type of technology we have right now. It wasn't hosted in the cloud. It was on-prem, inside devices. IT had to get involved. So it was very difficult to do. So getting a unscheduled or even a scheduled conversation meant that people picked up the phone and called people. They might have dialed into a conference line, but it wasn't the same thing. So the phone now becomes the fastest path to the next best conversation. So now we have to think about, how do we get there? The list is the strategy. We make a list of all the companies that we indeed want to sell to, right? And this is where most people fail, is the sales acceleration industrial complex promised, hey, we have all this intent and the industry firmographics and technographics, and we can tell you exactly who's in market right now, or give you a perfect list of your dream clients, or even these lookalike tools that they have right now. That's all maybe a shortcut to some of this, but you have to actually inspect the list of the accounts you want to sell to in the first place. Build a list of the accounts. Then, same thing. Once I have the accounts, move into the contacts. It's not the contact data vendor that's going to give you everything, right? And if they do, you still need to inspect those contacts to ensure that if you're targeting target CEOs, you're not getting the executive assistant to the CEO. Simple example. If you're trying to target sales leaders, you're not getting a VP sales that is probably one of 15 at the same company. So probably not the sales leader. He or she is probably an individual contributor. Okay. So you need to inspect the contacts and not just use titles. You need to get into roles, inspect a list. Now, once you have the list, then you want to move into enriching that list with as much data that you possibly can for those people. This is where the data vendors come in and give you a shortcut in some cases to get you more data. Now, most of the data they provide is shit. Okay. Uh, but some of it's good. Now you have to sort through that. So I have the accounts, I have the contacts. Now the next step is to actually figure out of the contact information that I'm trying to get into, which one's actually worth going after. And again, we're talking about the phone first, but you could do the same thing in other channels if you want to use it. We're all phone first because it's conversation first. It's the fastest path to conversation. So we take the phone numbers that we have for the people, and now we want to figure out is a number worth calling or not. This is a very basic understanding of what this looks like. I make a call against a number. If that number does not get me to the person, or a working voicemail for that person, I shouldn't call it again, right? That's pretty straightforward, right? People spend so much time trying to get through numbers that are not worth calling. So we want to figure out which numbers are worth calling. If a data vendor is selling you 3 numbers, you want the one. If you're using a waterfall and you've got 5 numbers, you want the one. This is why dial to connect rate has plummeted. It's not just the call deliverability stuff that we talked about, and also it's the quality of the data, but it's also the number of numbers reps have to sort through in order to actually get it a connect. Most leaders look at their dialer dashboards or their CRM dashboards, and rightly so, they're counting the total number of dials, but it's not unique contacts that are being dialed anymore. Back then, it used to be probably just one number per contact. Now it's on average about 1.7 to 2.3 numbers per contact. So you've already almost doubled the number of dials that you're making. And then you compound the idea of the spam likely, scam likely, and all that stuff, which is what significantly reduces that dial to connect rate. It's about double the numbers and half the connect rate. Lo and behold, a 10% connect rate that used to be pretty tried and true back in the day is now 3%. You just do the math on that, right? Roughly 3 to 5%. Doesn't surprise you. You're doing more dials and you have a deliverability issue. But if you can get to the actual number that's worth calling, guess what? It goes way up. Okay. So now that we have the numbers that were worth calling, here's where specialization comes in. Most reps, again, or most companies right now, again, are having one person at the company do all the stuff I just talked about. And by the way, it's the most unqualified person to do this. The SDR is going out, selecting the accounts, selecting the contacts, getting the contact information, putting it into these sequencers, and doing this multi-channel outreach when the reality is you should just figure out which ones are worth calling and which ones are not worth calling and call the people that are worth calling, right? Make a list, know what to say, call the list, follow up. Specialization, right? You should have a data team, do the data work. You should have leadership or the sales rep confirm the work. Then you should have a team that actually makes sure that the data is ready to go. Hat tip, Titan X will be a Disneyland Fast Pass to all this stuff. Figure out what's worth calling. Now you have a specialized team of people that all they do is make calls. This is all they do. They call. Our sequence is call. Okay, call.
And Ryan, this is the thing. Like, you just laid out for everyone watching this the exact steps for how to deliver a successful outbound program that uses cold calling as the main channel to have conversations and then eventually capture the people who are in market during those conversations and move them forward into an opportunity pipeline and a deal. Now, here's the thing. If we take a step back and we look at where it goes wrong as far as the last video, this is the second part to the sales acceleration industrial complex. In that video, what we talked about was the easy button, and the strategy of just do more was what everyone's trying to pursue. VPs of sales and CROs, because they're thinking in the short term, short-sighted strategy. They're not thinking long. And outbound, by definition, has to be a long-term strategy. If I can reach every single person who's reachable, only about 3% of them will actually be buying right now. So by definition, outbound cannot be a short-term strategy to create huge amount of results. However, over the long term, it can be. So when we think about What is the sales acceleration industrial complex? It is the whole subset of tools, data providers, dialers, sales engagement platforms, all these things that came out in the sales tech market. And as an aside, it's interesting to note there's only like what, 3 public companies that sell sales tools, that most of them actually haven't made it the distance as far as becoming a publicly traded company, but that's for another time. There's all these tools, hundreds, if not thousands of them, and they all promise pretty much the same thing. We will make
10x.
it easy for you to do more. They all make money and become profitable or try to grow selling the same thing, do more. But they're not actually helping you get more revenue, close more deals, or win more business. They're only helping you do more vanity metrics, activities. And when the activities, in the case of cold calling, a dial, when it's not actually scrutinized, you're not actually thinking about what is going on behind the dial. On the surface, it looks good. I can do 400, 500 dials a day on a parallel dialer like a Nooks, an Orem, a Connect and Sell. That looks good to my CRO, to my board, whoever for that day. But what's happening on the back end of that? And what happens over the course of 12 months if that continues to go on? What happens is always the same. The results begin to dry up. They disappear, where the vanity metrics just continue to pump out. So when you think about who wins and who walks away with any kind of success, it's the company selling you the data because you're buying more data, you need to use more. It's the company selling you the tools because you become more and more reliant on the tool, because when you don't have the results, you have to have an insurance policy or get fired as a leader. Your insurance policy is, don't worry, we're just going to do more. So you become more reliant on the dialer and on the data provider. And then you just talked about it a few moments ago. Suddenly the role of the SDR is a non-specialized role. And the role becomes bastardized with this do more strategy. And suddenly the SDR is now building lists, doing sales nav searches, sending DMs, emails, calls. They're doing lots of things that don't actually generate revenue. And they're also not very good at it. As a result of thinking about how do I just do more? Well, at some point, I need someone to continue to fuel the do more strategy. And I don't have resources internally to build all these lists because that was never part of the strategy to specialize in identifying accounts that are good fits in people. So just have the SDR build lists. Or I didn't really find an expert to do proper email campaigns, so just have the SDRs do it. And it becomes the do more plus just have the SDRs do it. What we're proposing is the exact opposite. Don't just do more, do better, pursue quality, and specialize. Because when you put those things together, what you described is the way to get there. The outcome, we're seeing this across all of our outbound operator clients. Titan X is probably seeing this with a lot of their customers. What you end up seeing is you're actually having meaningful conversations at scale, not just more dials at scale.
What this does too, and you talked about this recently, is um, it immediately exposes all the holes in your assumptions. And what most people don't think about in the, even if it's do more, even in the process that we're talking about right now, because there are some tools that we would recommend to get this system running on our side. They look at it and they're like, oh my goodness, this is so amazing. I just had 40 or 50, I can have one rep have 40, 50 conversations a day. And then they pencil that out. They're like, okay, well, let's get 10 reps doing that. It's like, well, hold on a second. You do not have enough reachable market to hire 10. This is another big problem is my plan said I need to hire 10 people. And even though you just showed me that I can specialize and make one person more productive, now let's just get 10 people more productive. But most markets can't actually keep a very specialized person when this is done properly,
Yeah.
productive consistently for more than a few months because they don't have enough data. And even though we're talking about more data, more data, more data, you still have to pump some data through the system, but it's intelligent data that's giving you information about how much actual people inside of a list are reachable and how much are not reachable. And once you actually do the math on that, it always blows people's mind because they overestimate the size of their reachable market, let alone their addressable market. And then in addition to that, their hypothesis of within those segments, once they start having conversations, they realize that the riches are always in the niches. And you want to be able to start to get honed in on if we can just reach these types of people, we win. These we don't
Yeah.
want to go after. And you're compressing that information in such a short period of time that you can rapidly learn. and adjust. But folks are not necessarily built for this yet because the volume of conversations coming in requires a different mindset. We also want to make sure that, again, we talked about this early on in the beginning of this, is now we're not talking about meetings, we're talking about conversations, and those conversations result in what we call a completion. Those completions then turn into activations, and activations are what we're after with that North Star. If my salesperson's not in a meeting, they're going to go to these next best conversations in the form of an activated lead. The most important thing here is that anyone that's doing this work actually has salespeople that are not going to sit on their hands and wait for people to come to them. Because no matter what you do in an outbound program, if you set meetings, have qualified meetings, have stage 2 opportunities, whatever the freaking objective is, it doesn't matter how far an SDR takes that work. If the salesperson will not freaking follow up in the channel that we know we can reach them, it will all go away. It will all go away. You had an example of this just before our recording today of somebody that is in the end of the sales process, asked for the order form, that our payment link to get started. And guess what? It went to spam. Most reps sit there and they just keep emailing. The guy said he was going to win. It's the end of the month. It's the holiday. I'm emailing him. Oh, he must be busy. He must be out. No, what did you do? You
Picked up
picked
the
up the phone,
I got his
called him
number,
back.
called him, and he goes, "Oh, hey, look at that. Your email didn't go through." And I knew something was off when 24 hours after he said he was going to complete the initial payment, it didn't come through. And there was stuck in his email filter.
Most reps sit there and go, well, they're probably busy. No, when somebody actually wants to do business with you, it's actually not intrusive. It's not a problem to do the follow-up. And you'll know as soon as they pick up the phone, if you actually have someone that's generally interested and want to move forward or they don't. Stop letting your fucking...
Ryan, I got to add this in too. You have the iPhone AI assistant pick up the phone. I had never called him before. And I just said, it's Ronan. Like,
well, yeah, I mean, this is the end of the funnel. So of course, somebody that wants to do that, but that's for a whole nother story. By the way, we should do
stay tuned for that episode. Yeah.
We should do a whole series because we have plenty of these recordings. I just did a pilot on Friday last week where we were actually calling consumers, which if there's any indicator on if a technology is going to like disrupt the market, always starts in B2C before it goes to B2B. 4 for 4 on the AI transfers. Anyway, we don't want to get off track here. The point of this is we want to step back in this process. We want to actually strategically think about solving the marketing equation, target message channel timing. We want to specialize our team around each of the necessary elements, and we want to keep people focused on that one job to be done. And if you do that, you can actually turn a 1 or 2 rep team into the production of 10, 20, 30, maybe even 40 reps in terms of the actual conversations in your market, and keep everybody happy, right? A lot of less cooks in the kitchen, a lot less variables to try to cover on if it's working or not working. And also, who wants to manage a team of 40 people who call out sick every other day and don't show up to work, right? We want to actually have a team that's hungry, has a system that delivers the conversations. And when you do this the right way, collect that information to create a flywheel. And at the net impact that we're seeing across the board is that the data-driven approach that actually gives you a realistic, predictable model of inputs in, outputs out at the top of the funnel is possible, but you actually have to do it the right way. You don't want to have issues with the automation trying to deliver the result, but real humans driving insights from every single attempt, from dial to deal. And so that's
to deal. I love that. That's such a great turn of phrase. And Ryan, just to recap, that last episode we talked about the sales acceleration industrial complex, how it's led to these super complex outbound SDR teams, very confused SDRs, and ultimately the results are nil, unimpressive. Cost of acquisition from outbound becomes expensive. The ROI is not there. Results are slow. We turn it on its head, and this is the solution to the problem. Instead of going to the market and buying a gajillion tools, keep it simple. CRM, dialer. We always recommend Salesforce and FrontSpin for the dialer. For your data, wherever you're going to get your contact data is where you're going to get your contact data. They're all equally trash, but you just got to use them. Put that through TitanX. It's the Disney Fast Pass for removing people who never answer and identifying people who do. For phone intent, you put that into the system and you hire specialists, cold callers, people who are excellent at having conversations. They don't sound awkward. We could do a whole episode on what we look for when we look for talent. When you put all that together, you have an expert who's building your list. You have experts who are working the workable contacts in that list. And you have experts who close deals and follow up with activated leads. All that works together. You're going to be producing revenue like no one's business at a faster clip, at a cheaper cost of acquisition. And that's exactly what we do at Outbound Operators. We help people, companies, internalize this kind of a system and an engine that drives outbound forward.
No doubt. If you want to try it all yourself, go hack this stuff together. Read Outbound Sales No Fluff. Again, it's linked somewhere in all of our content. You can get a free copy. Just putting those basic principles in play, slow down to speed up, reduce the number of cooks in the kitchen, and you're going to do better in outbound. If you're enjoying these types of shows, I liked that last time where comments drove some future engagement. So if you're following this right now, you have questions, you want us to dive deeper on a topic, we have some stuff planned out where we just talked about 2 more episodes here. But this is all coming together live. Every day we're showing up. So drop your comments, like, subscribe, share with everybody. We'll be coming back on a daily basis, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.